of these greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, worsening climate change as a result of that.
In Alaska, record high temperatures for more than 50 days in a row have created tinderbox conditions with more than 2.5 million acres burning. And these rising temperatures are hammering the state's wildlife and its commercial salmon industry. That's according to Jeannie Devon, communications director for the Alaska Democratic Party, in an interview on the broadcast.
We have wildlife issues where salmon by the thousands are having heart attacks because the water is so warm that they can't make it to their spawning grounds. They don't survive. They just die in the rivers. Walruses are having problems. Polar bears are having problems. I mean, it's catastrophic.
But some good news. Scientists at the Florida Aquarium in Tampa say that they have hit upon a breakthrough for the first time ever, succeeding in getting an endangered Atlantic Ocean coral to spawn in a laboratory. That could save the state's endangered coral reefs from climate change and disease. And finally, Swedish teen climate activist Greta Thunberg is right now crossing the Atlantic Ocean from Europe to New York City on a solar-powered zero-emissions racing ship to lead the global climate strike. Those are massive demonstrations that are scheduled around the world on September 20th and 27th to coincide with the United Nations General Assembly. The global climate strike was inspired by Thunberg's School Strike for Climate movement that has galvanized children around the world to demand that their governments act on climate change.
Do you suppose she'll have the same success in lighting a figurative fire under American politicians as she has in Europe?
One hopes.
We'll see. Travel safely, Greta. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Thanks, Brad and Desi. I don't know if Greta will be able to set a fire underneath our politicians. They seem not to care so much about children. They have them in cages at the border. But perhaps Greta can continue to, just light the fires that she's lighting under the activist community, which is really important right now. You're listening to WBAI 99.5 FM, Waking Up with Juliana and King. We're taking our musical break, and then we will come back with Miriam Galeen. We're looking forward to talking to her. She's from Earthstrike, New York, and she's going to be talking about the action against the Amazon fires and what's happening in Brazil. That action is happening here in New York City this Saturday. Stay tuned.
build walls, we'll grow wings. You can't keep us down because we're queens and kings. You build walls, we'll grow wings. You build walls, we'll grow wings and fly right over.
damage are we doing? Can we even manage to fix monsters and aliens? Whose man, whose planet is this? Like a movie every day, who's handling scripts? So we gotta do the work, who can handle the shit? More than anything else, we need empathy. Everybody wanna tell everyone what they better be, where they better live. Outside of these walls, we got equality here. You're not invited at all. It ain't even hypocritical, it's just pitiful. Shameless, how you judge a man cause his skin color and name is darker and harder to pronounce for a certain group of people. Now we gotta kick you out. Build a wall around yourself. If you don't see them, they don't count. You can't understand the profit off of them and they could bounce. But they wanna go low, then we don't go at all. We just fly. A wall is only so tall it can't touch skies. We vibe. We vibe. They wanna go low, then we don't go at all. We just fly. A wall is only so tall it can't touch skies. We vibe. And we vibe.
Thank you, Alana. Good pick. Black Eyed Peas, as she tells me, because I forgot, let's say, or didn't know at all. Anyway, that was beautiful. The Amazon forest, as we know, as we talked about briefly yesterday and mentioned at the top of the hour, and as the Green News Report covered, it's finally getting its due attention, what's going on in Brazil. The Amazon forest, by the way, referred to as the planet's lungs because it supplies 20% of the world's oxygen, that stuff we're breathing right now. Well, now the Amazon is burning at an unprecedented rate. Activists say it's the result of the economic policies of Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro. You may remember him from from everywhere in the news, but also from here on Waking Up. We had some Brazilian journalists on. We had activists on when Bolsonaro was slated to speak at our Museum of Natural History, and we got that finished. You know, we stopped that. Activists stopped that. Then he was going to speak at, I think, Cipriani's, one of those fancy restaurants. Then that didn't work. Then he was going to go to Texas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so we've been following what's happening in Brazil for quite some time, and now activists are rising up against Bolsonaro's earth-destroying policies here in New York this weekend, and one of the organizers of the protest, Miriam Galan of Earthstrike New York City, is right here on Waking Up today to talk about the issue and how to get involved in the fight to preserve the Amazon. Miriam, thanks for joining us on the program today.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Can you talk about what's been happening in the Amazon and why it's such a crisis?
Okay, so for some time now, we've been hearing that the Amazon is in trouble, that deforestation rates were able to be curbed dramatically from 2009 till about 2015, 17. And all of a sudden, everything has gone up again because in the name of development, countries that are trying to, be successful, like heavily industrialized countries, they think that's the way to do it. So they're literally now, Bolsonaro has opened up the Amazon rainforest and calls it ours to use and develop.
Ugh.
So
I remember the reason I stopped eating meat. One of the several, in addition to animal cruelty, was that cattle ranchers, they plowed down the rainforest, put cows on it. Now the rainforest, if you know about the rainforest, then you know that there's only a couple inches at most of topsoil. These trees are all connected to each other. There's not like a deep base of soil and then when the cows step on it, they ruin it. It can't even support the cows after a few years. So, and then it's not going to grow a rainforest back. And that was one of the reasons. And I know one of the things you can do is stop eating meat, or stop eating as much meat, specifically beef, and specifically from, like, I think McDonald's, right? Because aren't our fast food industries, isn't that where they get all their hamburgers?
Yeah, pretty much. McDonald's has been in cahoots with BJS and the big animal feed companies that are supplying the animal feed for the cows in Brazil. So, like what you said, they're clearing land for ranch, cattle
Yeah,
ranch.
for cattle ranching, sure.
But also they need to grow the soy and the feed that they would never even be eating. And since we're growing them as monocrops, that's also depleting the topsoil because
How can they be so? How can they be so? I mean, I hate this question, I guess, but how can they be so viciously vile against both the people living in the Amazon, the other things that live in the Amazon, and like the entirety of humanity? Do they not understand that the Amazon, they say it's theirs, but really, you know, we are a globe where, you know, we have to share all the natural resources because they all play into like whether we can all eat, breathe, live.
Yeah.
How do they not know this?
I think there's just a lot of misinformation being spread, like I was saying earlier, in countries that are less developed industrially. So to be successful and to be like the people we watch on TV from this country in the United States or Europe, they just feel like they don't care about anything else.
It's
wanting to
TV
be that
again.
way.
I was just talking about how TV, the song Black Eyed Peas said something about how, you know, kids see things on TV and then they wanted. We were just talking about that in the break. How, TV, you know, kids want what they see on TV.
It's very much that, and also we got to think about colonization and like the tremendous trauma that it has brought upon the people of the regions that were colonized. I, for example, was born in Ecuador, so I can tell you a little bit about how, you know, why it is that we decide to not stop ourselves from looking for quote unquote development because, you know, we're in this really poor areas and most of the food that is exported around the world is grown in South America and Central America. So it's just we kind of have to remember that it's capitalism, the culprit in all of this, and that a lot of the people, a lot of the farmers even, they're just kind of responding to their best interest without realizing that not having a planet to live on is, you know, one of the worst things that could happen to everyone.
Capitalism. That's correct. Oh, gosh. Can you talk about President Bolsonaro and why is he specifically I want to dig deeper a little bit into what he's doing, why he's to blame for this.
So I don't know if you've heard, but he's got a trade agreement with Mercosur and the EU to literally put a highway in the middle of the Amazon so that trading can be quote unquote easier. So that's one of the biggest reasons why he's opening up the Amazon right now, because for a long time he said, oh, the Amazon just does nothing. It's just there. We really need to use it and put it to work. So he cut back on a lot of FUNAI's funding, which is the agency that has been in charge of, you know, helping indigenous communities, because a lot of us may be aware that about 10,000 different tribes live in the Amazon, in the Brazilian Amazon alone. And the Amazon is, you know, it touches on a lot of countries like Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, you know. But right now, specifically, Bolsonaro has felt like, not just him, I can't just say him, because the deal with Mercosur is going through Argentina, is going through Bolivia, and they're all signing on to it, and the EU as well. So it's about looking at the people in power right now and what they're, you know, pushing this new guy, Bolsonaro, who is promising to his people in Brazil that they will have safety. Because for a long time, crime rates in Brazil were really, really high until he came on last year promising people that won't happen anymore. We're going to move on to a different type of living. We're going to develop our country. So I think you already know, it's the politics that are used all around.
Do you know how the rest of the world has been responding to this, given the fact that the entire world relies on the Amazon?
Yeah. I mean, I have been seeing the videos of the forest burning since, 3 weeks ago. And I've been sharing about them, and I've been asking people, what's happening, what can we do? And it just so happens that Monday, Sao Paulo goes black at 3 p.m., and other cities that, are far away from the Amazon, now people are like, okay, we can't ignore it. There's obviously something going wrong here, which is the burning of forests for cattle ranching mostly, but also for mining and logging, illegal logging. But I think that's the one, most of us just think deforestation for logging, for wood, which is a big part. But the biggest part of it is cattle ranching, because Brazil has become the number one, I believe, I could be wrong, number one exporter of beef.
Ugh, gosh.
So I'm so happy that you brought up, that cutting down meat or just not eating meat will be, something that us individually can do. But definitely collectively, we need to continue to share the stories of the indigenous leaders in Brazil and all over the Amazon that have been fighting for years, that have been sounding the alarm. How, what's her name? Moira Burrs from Amazon Watch recently spoke about. She says that it is unfortunate that it seems like that the Amazon has to burn before the world starts paying attention.
Yeah.
But since we're already here, it's time to start taking action and lobby our governments and any other governments that want to enter the trade agreements with Brazil. And like what you were saying, rejecting these companies, which are a lot of them.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of these companies are in cahoots with all of this clearing of land for beef.
Do you know specific companies other than McDonald's? I'm happy to tell everyone just don't eat at McDonald's. But unfortunately, President Trump is a big man and he eats at McDonald's, so he's probably clearing a rainforest every weekend when he has his lunch. By the way, I did want to say, Miriam, we're speaking with Miriam Galland. She is an activist with Earthstrike NYC. And there's going to be an action. We're almost at the end of the segment, so I want to make sure people know where the action is this Saturday and how they can get involved.
Thank you. Yes. So the action on Facebook, you can find the event. It's called Save the Amazon, Stop Fascism. We will be meeting at Bryant Park starting at 1 p.m., and we will march to an undisclosed location at 2 p.m.
Excellent. So you didn't get a police permit for this?
I don't believe we have a permit because
Great.
we don't need one. It's our right to
it is
assemble.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
So Stop the Amazon, Stop Fascism. It's on Facebook if you're online. Otherwise, just, you can go there and find out more information. But otherwise, the information you need to know is that it's at 1 p.m. starting at Bryant Park. Wear comfortable shoes because there's going to be walking. Bring water because it may be warm, although Saturday is it's not going to be Amazon warm. I do have a friend who we're having another journalist on from Brazil on Monday, I believe, if we're lucky. And my friend who is down in Brazil right now is telling me that it's very warm and Brazil is in the middle of their winter. So that's unusual climate change related weather that they're having there as well. So if you're going to march, now's the time. Tomorrow's going to be 80. So that's a nice day for marching. 1 p.m. starting at Bryant Park. And will you be there, Miriam?
Yes, I will be there, and we'll be inside the park near the 6th Avenue entrance.
Great. I'm sure we'll see you because there'll be signs and whatnot, I'm assuming.
Awesome.
Yeah, and bring signs and just make your voice heard. It's wonderful.
Anything else that you'd like me to mention about tomorrow?
Is there anything else you think the listeners need to know?
There is an amazing organization that's called Mongabe News. I'm sure you've heard about them.
Yes, but tell the listeners, please.
Awesome. Yeah, so Mongabe News has a lot of great information. They have been around since, I believe, the late 90s, and they are just really amazing. And if you just go on news.mongabe.com
Could you spell that?
Looking for information.
Could you spell that? Could you spell that word?
Okay. Yes, news.mongaby.com, and you start searching for stats on the Amazon and who are the companies involved. And
yeah, I want a
was reading
list.
the other day.
Let's get a list up.
Yeah, they have a list.
No, I want that list. Can you text it to me and I'll start reading it on the air so people can at least boycott, even if they can't make
March.
it. Yeah, if they can't march. Plus, a march is going to be a march. You can send it to Alana. I know she's been talking with you to set up this interview. So as soon as you can, because we can read it on the air today. And if not, I'm sure we're going to have to continue. It's not like they're going to be like, oh, there was a march in New York. Let's shut down the fires. So this is going to be a continued effort. The other groups involved in the march isn't Extinction Rebellion is going to be there, and some other groups as well?
Yeah, a lot of groups. Defend Democracy in Brazil is the group that sort of spearheaded the whole cancel Bolsonaro. We were able to rally, I don't know, over 30 groups to cancel him.
We spoke to them, and one of the organizers there is a friend of mine. So I'm very grateful to have been connected to that group. Yes, Defend Democracy in Brazil. Hey, Miriam, thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and thank you for coming on our show to let people know. 1 p.m., Bryant Park, tomorrow. Save the Amazon, stop fascism. Thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. For the work you guys are doing.
Oh, thank you. That's nice. You're listening to Waking Up. I'm Juliana Forlano in the studio with King Downing. You're listening to WBAI 99.5 FM on this going to be rainy day, or at least that's what they're telling us it's going to be. It rained pretty hard last night. It is 71 degrees going up to 77. It looks like it's going to start raining according to this radar by around 8:30, and it's going to blanket the entire sort of New York, Connecticut, upstate, Long Island-y area. So bring your umbrellas. It's just regular rain. It's not something, it's not floodworthy. It's rain. It's like normal, actual normal rain. I like that. We'll be right back. You're listening to Waking Up. I'm Juliana Forlano. How on the nose with that music?
Yeah, that was it.
Literally going to put a highway through paradise. Ay, 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 ay. I don't even know where to begin. Okay. We have a caller on the line who would like to chime in. Didn't get a chance to make his or her voice heard during the week. Caller, you are on the air. Your name and where you're calling from.
Okay, my name is Philip, and right now I'm calling from Harlem, New York.
Hi. Thanks for the call.
Thank you very much. Listen, couple of things. King Donovan said something earlier about the terms of Eric Gardner, and you talked about Eric Gardner, that the merchants were complaining that he was selling loose cigarettes, and and because they were selling loose cigarettes and he was taking business away from them. Well, selling loose cigarettes is illegal anyway. So if the cops approached Eric Garner because he was selling loose cigarettes and taking away from those who were the merchants who were selling loose cigarettes, then that was an illegal act to approach him at all. And second of all, he wasn't even selling loose cigarettes at the time that he was approached. Because if you listen to the tape, he makes a comment to the police that quote, I was doing your job. In other words, he had just broken up a fight and was standing there, and immediately after the fight was broken up by him, that's when the cops approached. He was not selling loose cigarettes at the time. Okay?
Yeah.
And
No, I was gonna say to you that I'm sorry I didn't hear what your name was. Could you tell me your name? Because I wanted to just address you and say thank you for calling that in. But what I was doing.
My name is Philip.
Okay, Philip. So I was reporting what a caller told us, and a caller from Staten Island told us that the stores there were selling the loose cigarettes and that it was illegal and that they were dealing with competition from the outsiders. And the caller was implying that he had information that the stores were calling on the police and there may have been some corruption involved in between them. And we have never said, I have always said that it was an accusation that was made against Garner and that he had a prior history of that, but there was no indication that anyone observed him doing that or that he was in the process of doing that when that happened. So you're right on all those accounts. You're right.
Thank you very much. Because everybody says he was selling loose cigarettes at the time, and therefore it's trying to justify the police even approaching him, okay? Nobody observed him. They were sent, and I believe that equals corruption, and therefore all the cops that were present were involved in a corrupt act, okay? And therefore the mother who says, like the sergeant, you should see the look on her face. She was getting over like a fat rat when she was up there in the press conference the other day. She was scared to death. You know why? Because she knows she was guilty, and she knows what she did was wrong, and she should lose her job, and everybody else on the tape should lose their job, because the only person who went to jail in the whole thing was the guy Order who made the videotape.
Yeah, and he's still in there.
Yeah, the cops made a move on him to set him up to put him in jail as punishment, retaliation for daring to videotape the cops. So Order needs to be released immediately, and he needs to sue the city and everybody else involved. And those officers need to be held accountable.
Thanks.
Every single one.
Philip.
And if any cop
Thank you.
any kind of arrest and plays a game,
Philip,
then they ought to be suspended.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks for your call. Those are all great points.
Awesome. I mean, what else needs to be said? Well, a little more because we have a guest.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
5
You
years.
didn't take all the thunder.
No, I mean, this is good. And those things need to be said. And I'm glad we have the airwaves where people can make sure that the clarity of their understanding is on the air for others to hear. 5 years after, obviously. Leo's firing, that he was just one bad apple, that he, that we keep hearing over and over has only had the effect of abdicating responsibility for the corrupt policing system they run. Natasha is on Waking Up with us today. Natasha Lennard, thanks for joining us.
Hi there, how are you?
Hi, I'm so glad you could be on the show. We've been wanting to have you on because we are regular readers of your work, so I appreciate you being on here this morning with us.
Oh, thank you, and thanks for having me. Yeah, a bit early for me, but we can make
It's early for us, too. Yes, so double, triple thank you for that. So activists have been calling on the police to fire Pantaleo. Why is this not a moment for celebration, as one might imagine now that he has been fired?
For a number of reasons. First of all, it's the firing itself is long overdue. And even the call for the firing was sort of a call for least possible amount of justice given the context and the gravity of this case. We have here a police officer who 5 years ago choked the life using a banned maneuver, a chokehold, choked the life out of a unarmed black man who, whether or not he was even trying to sell Lucy's that day. It seems indeed from follow-up investigations he was not, but I don't want to even focus on that, because even if he had been, there are absolutely no grounds to talk about or lay any blame at the feet of Eric Garner, who was choked to death.
That's
And
exactly what our previous caller was saying, that, this idea of the loose cigarettes, somehow that's like, oh, of course the police needed to go over there, and we can draw lots of parallels. They're doing the same thing with people at the border. Oh, they crossed the border, so they're illegal, and therefore they should be treated with the full force of our, brutal system.
So it's a deadly, brutal and violent response, and one that is absolutely not an anomaly. Of course, recent research just published found that black men and boys face a 1 in 1,000 chance of death by cop, and so that's over 2 times what their white peers would face. So it's a potentially major cause of death for black men.
That seems like an enormous number.
Yes, 1 in 1,000 chance of the things that you could die of if you're a black man. It could be death by cop, and that is, it's staggeringly high.
Staggering, yes.
Research that came out of Rutgers University. The call for a firing seemed limited even in and of itself. But as we saw with major protests 4 years ago, the decision not to indict Officer Pantaleo caused a huge amount of anger. So all that was really left, that he wasn't going to face any retribution from the criminal justice system, was what would play out from his departmental trial.
Natasha, we've been following quite closely on the story here on WBAI because it's of enormous interest to our audience. And I wanted to get with you specifically about, the response that the police have been having now that we're seeing, because we're fair, our listeners are pretty much up to date on what's going on. So in your piece, you describe the PBA, the Police Benevolent Association, as an institution rotten to the core. Can you talk about why you characterize it that way, and what is their capacity to do harm in our communities?
You briefly cut out there for a second. Can you?
Sorry. I wanted to hear about your thoughts about the Police Benevolent Association.
Yes. So this is the largest police union in New York City, and it is, a belligerent and blustering fraternal order, which is deeply invested in police impunity at every level, and responds with childish and blustering rage at the smallest suggestion that we need police reform, police accountability, a challenge to endemic police racism. So in this case, when Pantaleo was fired after even a police commissioner board judge said, this man really has to be fired, the union reacted with a fervid rage, called O'Neill a problem for having acted with anti-police extremism. And keep in mind, O'Neill himself expressed a really disconcerting amount of sympathy for Pantaleo when he announced the firing. So we're seeing here really classic PBA behavior, which is to throw the entire very wealthy and politically powerful weight that they have towards police impunity, towards lack of accountability, and to affirm that the police should to be violently and deadlily racist at any turn without any consequence, and that we can be ready to expect that any time something like this happens and the PBA responds.
Natasha, we have learned to ignore Patrick Lynch. The activists know that he's just out there and he's stirring things up. Before I ask my real question, I just had one curiosity, and it's not really directed to you, it's directed to anybody, because I'm all for the rights of anybody to unionize, but I'm wondering, this union seems to have more influence than we've seen with any administrations or any other politicians. And so I just wonder whether anybody has looked into the use of their money, the contributions they make, any lobbying they do. So that was just a pin out there. But then the question I really have is, I'd like to focus on O'Neill, because O'Neill is in the background a lot, and we expect Lynch to do what he does. But can you kind of talk about this spin that O'Neill put on there? And I would just like you to fold into the context two things that we've learned. One is that Pantaleo, and I got this firsthand from a mother in Staten Island, had a history of harassing black kids while letting white kids go who were in the same group. And there are other people who have reached out to us and said that despite this quote of him being, this officer who came to do good, that he actually has had a history of complaints. Can you talk about his history, but then also O'Neill's spin on Pantaleo as this nice guy who was trying to do good?
Right. So just the very specifics of O'Neill's statement around Pantaleo's firing, I think, reveal very much indeed. He said in so many words, if I were a cop, if I was still like a cop, a beat cop, I'm mad at me today. So he's saying, I leave room for police anger at this absolutely necessary, long overdue, very small act of firing. So immediately we see where his sympathies lie, and they're disgraceful. He made a point of talking about Eric Garner having resisted arrest. He even blamed Garner for, I think the line was almost something to the exact words of, I'm sure he didn't know he was in such bad health that a minor skirmish with police would be, for anyone who's seen video recorded by Ramsey, also minor skirmish, he screamed, "I can't breathe," 11 times.
I believe he had a knee in his back, did he not? Or someone sitting on his back?
Exactly.
That's not a minor.
It's a very, very violent interaction for anyone who would watch it. But Pantaleo spent his energy in his remarks giving credit to this police officer and calling it a different type of tragedy that this man had to lose his job. And, sure, he doesn't have the same famed bluster of someone like Lynch, but he's a police commissioner.
I'm just wondering what will happen to Pantaleo if he'll just cross the border into New Jersey, change his name a little bit, and become a police officer somewhere else. Is he banned forever, or just banned in New York, or what?
What exists in the state civil service law is that he does potentially have the ability to appeal his termination, and that has happened before in similar cases, and it has worked. Cops who you think have been terminated for some of the gravest behaviors and abrogations of their alleged duty actually appeal their firings and get their jobs restored, or at least their pensions. And the PBA has said, they said kind of on the spot, that they will be looking into that and looking to help Pantaleo do that. So, he might not even be done for good in New York, which, is awful.
Your article was really about meaningful change, and I encourage everyone to go over to the Intercept and read it. It's will there be will there be meaningful change to policing after this firing? I'm guessing your answer, in no uncertain terms, is going to be no. Why don't the police believe, or how is it so confrontive to them that they cannot believe that they need to be constantly improved? All groups need to evolve and be constantly improved. What is it about police that believe they can just do whatever they want and work with impunity? And do you think there's a way to, either from the outside or inside, to just, I don't think we're going to force it, because if we try to force them, they're going to be like, no, we'll do whatever we want. But if we really want change, it seems like there has to be a way to address this.
I mean, fewer cops. cutting down police. I genuinely think for reasons that can and have filled books, and I actually particularly recommend the work of Alex Vitale, who wrote a book by Verso Books called The End of Policing about this very problem. No, I don't think we're going to get better policing by urging better behaviors, by even the smallest reforms. The police union and its officers react with huge ire. And nor do I think choosing bad apples and thinking we can excise all of them from the rotten tree is going to leave us with better policing. We need the sort of policies that decriminalize, and find as many spaces as possible where policing is not where we go to first. Where getting the police involved is not the first port of call. And one of Sanders's criminal justice reform policy agenda plans is to shift first responder protocol, so you don't always get a cop come if 911 is called.
Wait, they're actually Sanders is actually, not Sanders is actually, but someone is actually talking about this out loud in front of people.
Yeah, and this was, I think a really significant detail in his really quite broad, good criminal justice reform agenda. But yeah, no, I think that's the thing. So, if you've got social workers, ambulances, and not cops coming when, perhaps someone with a mental illness problem is in a dangerous or perilous event, or there's a medical emergency, and the police turning up, something like a drug overdose, police turning up can make things violent, can make things deadly, whereas other social and emergency services might not. We need to be thinking about, given the intransigence that we see with policing as an institution and its real, the unstoppable racism that it carries and it proliferates, I think the best way we can talk about challenging that is to try and find sites where we're not calling in the police and we're taking things towards a social justice
912. We can set up like a 912 if you want a social worker to come.
Or just, and exactly, and just sort of decarceration and making the boundaries of criminal justice sprawl smaller and less pervasive for poor communities of color.
Natasha, thank you so much for coming on our program. We've been speaking with Natasha Lennard of the Intercept. She has a new book, by the way, Being Numerous, Essays on Non-Fascist Life. I encourage everyone to go out and pick up a copy of that, and hopefully we can have you on to talk specifically about that as well. Would you come back?
Absolutely, anytime, even early.
Oh, thank you. That is wonderful. Okay, we will set that up. That'll be terrific. Thanks again, Natasha. Appreciate it. You're listening to WBAI 99.5 FM. This is Waking Up with Juliana and King. It is 77. No, 1. Going up to 77. That's it. Not 100, not 95, not 1,000% humidity. 70 degrees, going up to 77. Some of y'all out there are already seeing rain. If you're listening from Elizabeth, you're seeing rain. If you're listening from some parts of Newark, you're seeing rain. If you're listening from Queens and Yonkers and the Bronx, it's raining outside, or even just possibly sprinkling. And then it's going to come and eclipse the entire part of our country. I think do we have time for one more call? Michael says no. So we'll put it on him that we can't take. Just teasing y'alls. Hey, thanks everyone for listening to the show this week. Next week, we are here again from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Early. King gets up at 3:15, goes to bed at 2. So,
definitely last night again.
What are you doing this weekend?
What was a worthy cause?
You doing anything?
No, this time it's I'm going to the funeral of a college classmate. But in New Orleans style, it's a celebration of a life.
Are they going to put him Irish style, like up on the bar and everyone drinks while he's
it's
up
probably
there?
going to be more closer to the African tradition than the Irish tradition.
There's not a lot of Irish people in New Orleans, I guess. Will there be a parade?
I don't think so, but It should be. It's a chance to
I'm
catch
sorry
up.
for your loss.
It's a chance to catch up with a lot of folks.
Yeah.
And but pay attention. Please go online and look for the 24th annual Freedom Fighters tribute. We didn't get the news from the King, but that's on Saturday. So go online and look for it. They're going to be honoring Reverend Herbert Dartrey.
Where's that? Where's that going to be?
That's going to be at the Corona Library in Queens from 3 to 7.
Oh, that's convenient.
Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, good thing you got in there.
Yeah, I had to.
Message from the King.
They would kill me.
Oh,
the King. Kill the King.
Oh, no. You come in with no head. Hey, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next week. I hope you have a lovely weekend.